Hello, MGTOW. Hello, men. This is Howard Dare. Thanks for stopping by. So, I want to pose the question, are ugly women destroying civilization? Because I propose that they are. But hear me out, because I know this sounds kind of cruel to say, and I think you'll agree with me once you hear my reasoning. Now, I ask you the question, are women getting uglier? Now, this is a difficult question, isn't it? Because you see them every day, right? So when you see something every day, it's almost like asking if someone's getting taller, or fatter, right? Well, they're not much fatter than they were, yesterday, so they don't appear to be getting fatter, but they are a lot fatter than they were a year ago. But you don't see it that way. So this is why I asked the question, are women getting uglier? And I believe that they are. And this is part of a whole theory of mine, which is related to the destruction of Western civilization, which is an oxymoron to say because, Western civilization is civilization. What are we going to say? We're going to say Eastern civilization? No, because the aspects of Eastern civilization that are civilized, we call them Western. So there you go. There's no sort of, racism or any stupid stuff involved like that. It's part of the problem, right? You'll see. So here's what I'm proposing, that as women become more entitled and privileged and the resources and the focus of the society, the culture, the civilization, the media is turned more towards their interests, I believe that they become entitled princess bitches. And they stop taking care of themselves. They become unfeminine, all right? They become unworthy mates. There's no reason for them to have a decent attitude, and this spills over into how they take care of themselves physically. So this is almost like a cycle where the women get uglier, the men become less interested, and the civilization falls. And it's because of the entitlement of the women. And it's because of the excess resources that enable them to, play the victim and to get the resources going their way. Now, is all of civilization going to die off? No, it's not. Because you're always going to have these ugly, unattractive, entitled women that want to reproduce. And you're always going to have these weaker and weaker men who are capitulating to the feminine in order to reproduce. And the only reason why these men can do this is because the civilization, the society, the culture has previously been set up through masculine virtue, which gives them an excess of resources, an excess of human labor, security, and things like that. So what I'm suggesting is that the women getting less attractive is a byproduct of feminism, of cultural Marxism, of postmodernism, this attack on gender relations, on sexual dynamics. Women have no place in a men's society. They really don't. This idea of pretending. I cannot tell you how absurd it is when a woman walks up to me like she's my boss. Another man isn't allowed to walk up to me like that unless he actually is my boss and I respect him. I'm reminded of this scene in the latest Batman movie, right? Where Bane just, says, yeah, what difference does it make how much money you've given me? Does that give you any power over me? And then he just breaks the man's neck, So it's this attitude. It's this devaluing of male virtue. So this is the decline of Western civilization. As the male virtue creates the society and civilization of plenty and safety, a dependent class of people, scavengers, this kind of animal instinct within people, it takes hold. And it takes hold of human sympathy and compassion, which starts on the female side, which is not a bad trait, which I am not condemning, but then it goes too far. And the women stop taking care of themselves like women. They start trying to behave like men. They really want to go for, they want to get a hold of that brass ring, even though they don't realize that in order to do that, you have to be a man. You have to get the shit beat out of you. You have to be competitive, not successful, right? Oh, what's the difference between being competitive and being successful? Because if you're successful because you've cheated, you're not really successful. You're just, you're not competitive. That's the whole thing. You don't have that actual virtue. It's like somebody who gets the heavyweight belt out of, politics, but not out of fighting, or just arranges it so that they're never fighting anybody difficult. It's never a real fight. Politics, female guile, manipulation, psychological manipulation, turning men into servants, into slaves. And then the women just get fatter and more entitled, more privileged. More of the resources go towards taking care of their wants and needs. They just start screaming and crying louder and louder. And the next thing you know, 60-70% of your population, are a bunch of people who don't want to work. They're all fat. They're all uneducated. And they all demand welfare and free medical insurance and free education. And free food, right? So they eat the bad food. They get sick. They need the free medical care. The education it never did anything for them. And they just reproduce like crazy, as best they can. So there will always be people reproducing, but there won't be people and resources and the virtue needed to sustain the whole thing. That's what you're looking at right now. That's the decline you're looking at right now. And you'll see more and more desperate laws being enacted, to curtail people's speech, to limit their freedom, both in thought, and physically. The sanctioning of their resources, their tax dollars, their money, their country's resources, to the ends that their gynocentric female leaders see justified, which is, of course, their security and their material wants and needs, regardless of the male sacrifice and the societal cultural sacrifice that has to take place. They won't look at that conveniently. This is why male disposability, right? How could she do such a thing to you? It's like, well, that's the whole thing. She can do such a thing to you, right? How could she go into the court and tell lies about you? Well, she can. That's exactly the point. Don't the other people know that she's lying? Yes, they do. Why don't they care? They don't care. I'm sorry. And this is actually a slightly other subject, where given the fact that you are, as a man, in a psychological war zone, what on earth do you expect? And it's this, well, I don't mean to say it like that. I believe that we as men are inclined to forget and to pretend that everything is okay. And it's not. And if you'll just kind of keep that in your mind, so the problem is, so here's the real problem. Okay, you're tough enough. I swear you are. You're strong enough. You're tough enough. You can deal with this. I promise you. It's true. Here's the problem, though, okay, is that if you convince yourself that you're not in a war zone and then you step on a landmine, you're like, what the fuck? What just happened? Okay? If the bitch tells a bunch of dirty lies about you and gets you fired, you're like, what the hell? I must be a really rotten person. All right? If the girl acts all scared and afraid like you've offended her and you've got to be fired, you're like, oh, gee, I guess I really did do something wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. That's the war zone that you're in. Oh, you don't want to admit it? Oh, no, it's not that bad? Oh, okay, great. Then guess what? Then the psychological injuries that you're dealing with, they never heal because you never acknowledge them. So the women are way out of hand, okay? You can understand this dynamic. You love women, okay? You want to do everything to please them and to protect them? Well, now they're a bunch of fat, entitled pigs. Do you understand? Of course you do. It's clear enough. You want to put your foot down? You want to say no to it? You think it's gone too far? Too late. There's too many other men who will just bend over backwards and do whatever they want immediately because they want to keep their jobs, and they have mortgages and they've made these commitments that they were conditioned to make. So they can't stand up to the women. They can't say no to the women. And they call that, they say, oh, this is us loving women. That's what it means, right? And when a man says, hey, women might not be the most perfect things in the whole universe all the time, the man says, what are you, gay? What are you, a bad man, right? Now, take a look at his health. Take a look at the way he physically carries himself. And I don't mean a young man, okay? Man up to be 35, late 30s, okay? He's fine. Don't worry about it, okay? What you need to look at is the cumulative effect of what he's doing psychologically on his health by the time he gets to be about 40 years old. That's what you need to recognize, okay? And what you'll notice is that, 75%, 80% of all the men in our Western civilization, they get sick as dogs. They turn into fat-looking women. And my other point was that the young women that should be at their peak of attractiveness, okay? They look like fat little pre-diabetic kids. You know what I mean? They look like fat little roly-poly things. And the boys look even worse. They look like metrosexuals, right? They look like fashion models. You know what I mean? They're acquiring the shape of these thin little fashion models. And the girls are getting the shapes of these like fat little Teletubbies. That's how I see it, right? And as I said, I think it's an indication of the societal values becoming physically manifested. Now, what can you do as an individual man, as a MGTOW man, as a man who wants to gain back his pride, his dignity, and his effectiveness in life, making a little something out of his life? You can focus on yourself. You can stay focused on yourself. You can stay focused on your interests. You can stay focused on building yourself up. When you're lifting weights, okay? You're not competing with anybody. You're competing with yourself. And you're not looking to rip your muscles out of their, sockets and things like that. You're looking to improve a little bit. That's all. And you know what that takes? That takes a little rest too. You got to work hard, but not so hard that you hurt yourself. And you got to give yourself a break. You got to give yourself a little rest. You got to give yourself a little credit. You got to not get distracted and focus on stupid, retarded bullshit like impressing some fat, ugly bitch who doesn't think you're worth a dime. Okay? That's not your game. Focus on overcoming the difficulties within yourself, the challenges within yourself. It'll take a little longer, okay? But you'll be able to work through, some of the internal problems. Like I've said, I think men are strong enough to deal with whatever the situation is, as long as they can face the truth of the situation. And I know it's hard. I know it's really hard. But you face the truth of the situation. Oh, that's a lying, entitled princess bitch, right? Who'll just lie just to get stuff, to pretend that she's a winner, right? It's like, okay, great. You've got a degree in brain surgery, bitch, but you can't do the first part of it, right? Oh, you're in charge here? Yeah, right. You don't even know what you're doing here. You don't even know what we're doing here. You don't even know what's going on here, okay? So this is the battle. This is the challenge. Build yourself up. Stay focused on yourself. You will see improvement. Build on that. I hope this helps. I'm going to leave it at that for now. There's a lot of other aspects to this topic, to this conversation, and I'm going to talk about them. So let me know what you think about this in the comments section below. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, donate, and join me again, Howard Dare, as I plan to have more content for you. Thank you, MGTOW.